How would you like it if you were called the generation who entered the hardest situation since World War II? For the 20-something generation, they're entering into a world where there's very few jobs, they're overeducated, they're overqualified, they have too many debts. But at the same time, despite all the challenges that they've entered into, they're really strangely optimistic about life. They're optimistic about relationships and about work, even when a lot of them don't have work. Well, I think the challenges probably fall in two main areas. One's relationship and the other is work. And so with respect to work, kind of finding the right job, knowing what your calling is. I think people don't want to just find a 9-to-5 job that pays the bills, but they want something that they can build their whole lives around. Given that desire of really wanting to find meaningful work, the lack of jobs and opportunities, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. And if you add that on top of the school debts that they've accumulated over the last few years, it becomes financially very challenging for them. When we think about where they are after they graduate, not being able to find a job can be really demoralizing if this is your first experience in the workforce. The other set of challenges falls in the category of relationships. For the 20-somethings, they have so many friends, online friends, they're in touch with people around the world, and relationships are something that in some ways are very easy to come by. But despite the superficiality of a lot of these relationships, the hunger and the desire for deep, meaningful relationships hasn't gone away or hasn't somehow been diminished by all the prevalence of social media. It's a really encouraging sign for me that they see technology as a means to an end. They don't necessarily see it as an end. Even though the temptations and challenges are there, 20-somethings want to see technology as a means to strengthen relationships and not as a means to replace them. I think it's easy for every generation to feel like the 20-somethings are a hard and challenging time. So what makes it particularly challenging for this current 20-something generation? I think some of the unique challenges for this generation has been growing up with the recession when they were younger, when they're now at a point of employment, of being able to have a job to enter into another great recession. And so some of the significant challenges of this generation is actually financial. They haven't experienced a lot of prosperity. And while large institutions have failed in the course of their lifetimes, they also see stories of individuals who have changed and shaped the world as we know it. There is a sense that people have the ability to change things that are wrong with the world, and I think that's a big part of what makes them so optimistic. From a Christian perspective, it's not just naivety. There's a reason for optimism, even despite the brokenness that we see in our world today. And I think this generation really embodies the hope that the gospel presents to us. Working with 20-somethings, one of the main concerns that comes up is this desire to be married. And even though the 20-somethings, this is the time for career development and thinking about their calling, one of the areas that's very much embedded with this idea of calling is getting married and finding the right person. And if you look at the statistics of those who are single, 82% of millennials want to get married. And compare that to the 62% of the rest of the population who's not married who want to get married. You can see in the 20-somethings a real strong desire to be married, and that comes with it the pressures and the stresses associated with, will I find the right one? A big part of the 20s is trying to figure out who you are. 72% of millennials believe that their career is essential to their personal identity. Part of the reality is they see a lot of examples of people who have these amazing jobs, and that starts to become the norm. So what becomes popularized through tweets and social media outlets are these amazing stories of millennials who are changing the world, and all of a sudden they think, well, it'll only take a few years for me to get to that place. There's a skewed perception of what is realistic, but that's part of what it means to be a millennial. You're so optimistic about life and the possibilities, and you're willing to be entrepreneurial, you're willing to take risks, you're willing to do things that no one else has done, and even when everyone tells you you're being naive, you're still going to go ahead and pursue your dreams because that's what you do. The future of our country, at least to me, feels like it's in good hands as we see the kind of people that the 20-somethings are, their desire to change, their desire to make this world a better place, their desire to forego material comforts for the sake of meaning. These are all great things that I hope that we'll be able to encourage and foster more in the coming years.